right, thank you for staying with Daybreak. The conversation begins right now. We'll start with the newspaper reviews and then get into the main story, and the main agenda of the conversation today is how has the 12th Parliament performed? We'd like to hear from you. What is your review? On a scale of 1 to 10, what would you give them and why? And what are the lessons that the 13th Parliament can learn from them? Honorable John Badi is here, Minority Leader, and Honorable Caleb Kositany, Member of Parliament for Soi, is also with us here in studio. Philip Nyakundi, Mzalendo Trust, Head of Policy and Partnerships, is joining us online. But let's start off first with a quick review of the dailies and take a look at the Daily Nation, for example. The front page, in the first 100 days, and they're saying, same old story, from a hustler fund to Baba Care, livestock insurance and automated revenue collection. Honorable Kositany, are these promises realistic from where you stand? And Kenyans have been here before, where presidential candidates make promises, but then when the rubber meets the road, nobody fulfills them.
I think, Trevor, when you look at the promises by Kenya Kwanza, led by William Ruto, it is what we actually said initially, that we want to change the conversation. And the conversation on how we're going to run our politics will not be on personalities, will not be on empty rhetoric, but will be an economic conversation. And when you look at and I'm happy the way the newspaper has presented, number 1 to 10 on both sides. We have the establishment of the Hustler Fund, giving women 50% of cabinet, and we have said it's not about a woman, it's about all the women of Kenya. Establish the Women's Rights Agency. The most important that is the Women's Rights Agency and the Judiciary Fund, to operationalize the Judiciary Fund, because we want independent institutions to be truly independent. That is the judiciary, the police, so that we depoliticize the functions of this. When the judiciary wants funds, then they have to, try and massage government and not to rub shoulders with government, so that also the fight against corruption can be freed from being controlled by a few. Go for Caleb, go for Mbadi because of political his persuasion and affiliation. And I think what we have promised as Kenya Kwanza is doable. Yeah. And we are happy that, as was said by our party leader, William Ruto, that we are going to change the conversation. We're happy. The conversation has changed. Okay. Everybody now is talking about economics, about empowerment. We are talking about creating the Hustlers Fund. The other side is talking about giving 6,000 to every household. And at least there's a conversation based on the common mwananchi now. It's no longer about the big boys. All right.
What do you think, John Badi? Are these realistic expectations or even promises?
Well, it depends on how that government that comes into office makes funds available. So it means you have to realign your budget in line with your campaign manifesto. So it is for Kenyans to choose which side to vote for, depending on the priorities and also possibility of that government realigning the funds. I just want to mention that for Azimio One Kenya Coalition, the promises that we have given, we will deliver on, because we have a plan to do this. So if you look at number 1 to 10, we are talking about improving terms of service for KDF and police. Yeah. We are recognizing that security of this country is paramount. In fact, the main reason why governments are formed is to provide security. Otherwise, people would just lead their normal life and go on. Yeah. But security is paramount, so we have put security as very key and critical. And trained teachers, education is very important. I've heard people talk that Kenyans are no longer, there is no ujinga in Kenya. Mm-hmm. But I will tell you, there are children in this country, and you have aired many of them in your various media stations, who are crying literally after scoring 400 marks at the KCPE, and they can't go to school. So that, if not addressed, then ujinga will still continue in Kenya. Okay. The 6,000 is being used as an enabler, as an economic enabler for progress. What we are saying is we need a universal basic income for Kenyans, and it happens in many places. Health care is very important, and that is why Baba Care is paramount. The issue of reducing the cost of unga, sugar, and others is just to demonstrate that the cost of living is of a major concern to Kenyans. If you look at the opinion polls that are being carried out today, number 1 or top priority in the list of Kenyans' interest is actually cost of living. So what I would say is if you look at these things and you cost them, both sides, they cost quite a bit. You need some billions of shillings. If you ask me from our side, these items listed here would cost no less than 350 to 400 billion shillings.
And where is this money
so you
going
have
to
to
come
make
from?
that money available. And I will tell you, that's why you find corruption is also very key. In fight against corruption is very key in the Azimio manifesto. And you can even see here we have listed as public officers must sign anti-corruption charter, but it will go beyond that because we have realized that in this country there are enough laws, there are enough institutions to fight corruption. What is lacking and missing is the goodwill from the top leadership of the country. And Raila Odinga and Martha Karua have pledged that the two are going to lead the fight against corruption. So if we seal the loopholes of corruption, we'll make money available. There are certain funds that are already also in place. Like when we talk about the 6,000 shillings, already in the current budget, we have about 32 billion that is being given to the vulnerable groups. We need 144 billion to implement this program. So it therefore means that we'll have to look for another 110. Let me just summarize by saying, and conclude by saying, that we are alive to the fact that the two administrations, that is the Kibaki and Uhuru administration, have quite done a lot in terms of investing in infrastructure. Now we have to move more to investing in people.
And let me bring in Nyakundi on this. Nyakundi, what do you make of these promises that are being made by both presidential candidates? I mean, they're heavy in terms of expenditure, but we've also seen an attempt to raise the debt ceiling. In fact, the Senate was discussing that just yesterday.
To be honest with me, and where I sit, the worry is where is this money coming from? And the question has been, when we look at the history of the promises that are actually made during the campaigns, paints a very grim picture in the sense that what normally political parties do is promise, but when it comes to the implementation, it becomes quite a challenge. Then we hear a number of excuses ranging from the economy, the pandemic, and all that. I think if we can speak from experience looking at the Jubilee Party the last 10 years, a number of organizations, and us included as Mzalendo, have done an analysis of the manifesto that, for example, Jubilee prepared, and the last one being the last 5 years. And I can tell you for free, these things that we're talking about when it comes to corruption, when it comes to the welfare of the people, those things that were promised in that constitution, 80% of the promises that lie in that manifesto remain undone today. So when I hear the promises, I sometimes shudder and I wonder what will it take for them to promise and deliver at the same time. So for me, we look at these promises and take them with a pinch of salt, considering the history we've had in terms of the implementation of manifestos, because then we don't see follow-up programs coming after the manifestos have done. If you talk about corruption, you would expect that you will go back to the institutions that deal with corruption, ask them what are the challenges. You will go back to, for example, and say, when was the last time Kenya was audited? And the last audit for Kenya, I think the UNCAC cycle, that was done in Kenya was in 2018, if I remember very well. So the United Nations Convention Against Corruption and its auditors have already done a very good work. So you don't need really something from the blues to pick up the process. You just need to go back and pick the blueprint, put that in your legislative agenda in the House, and put that in your various policies that you come up with. But we've rarely seen that happen.
Gositanyo, where is this money going to come from?
Well, Trevor, every government, and as my good friend Honorable Buddy has said, and with these promises that we are making, we're not making them just out of the blues. For us, on where we sit as a Kenya Kwanza, these are actually needs that we have gotten from the views, the county forums that you've seen us holding. And that is why we say we launch our manifesto on the 30th, after we have completed the county forums and gotten the views of the people at the bottom of the pyramid on exactly what we want to do. Where the money will come from is we will have to we will have to adjust. And it is quite obvious that whichever government comes in, they will have to review the budget, because this budget now is aligned to maybe the promises and the legacies that President Uhuru wants to achieve. But it is quite obvious that with the promises, the 10 that are listed here on the headlines, is every government will have to come and try and exactly see how to save funds and generate some income in order to implement. We have also seen, and we are coming from a point whereby Nyakundi has just said it, that we make promises and then we don't implement them. We have seen that 5 years is not a very long time. We are now dealing with a more educated, more knowledgeable, more politicized Kenya. And anybody who is serious and is worth his salt and knows that he's going to face an election in the next 5 years will have to stick on their manifesto line and try and implement and improve on the scorecard, so that at least by the time you're going in back to the Wananchi, you have something to report.
So the raising of the debt ceiling, from what you're saying, was necessary then?
I don't think, from where I sit, I don't think it was necessary. We have said that we can generate income, that fund, locally. We don't have to source, borrow and borrow and borrow. Yeah. As we have said, it is borrowing other people's money. We have ways that we can raise that money locally, and it is possible. It is doable, and that is our plan. They believe that it's borrow up the ceiling, but it's also dangerous. We are actually at a very high risk as a country of falling back on our debts. And as we speak, Trevor, and I hope Honorable Mbadi will agree with me, the biggest problem we have now is the issue of pending bills. The pending bills in this country are almost at 500 billion. And most of it, maybe 99% of it, is owed to locals. That is money that, if paid, can go back to the economy and spur growth. That is one of the key issues also that we'll be addressing as Kenya Kwanza.
But should the debt ceiling have been raised by Parliament?
Let me be very clear. We can't avoid raising debt ceiling in the immediate term. That would be a lie to Kenyans. It would be cheating Kenyans on something that is not possible. We intend, and if you look at our manifesto, just go to the side of managing debt management, where we have talked about creation of an independent and strong treasury in terms of managing debts. And we have also talked about how to mobilize local revenue. But that will take a while. As we speak, we are at 8.6 trillion. Debt level. Our debt ceiling is at 9 trillion. Our current budget has a deficit of about 800 billion shillings. So the space available is only 400 billion, but you already have passed a budget with a deficit of 800 billion. So in the immediate term, you have to. But debt must be managed. And as Azimio, One Kenya Coalition, is very clear that we are going to manage our debt, and we are using multifaceted approach, one of which is to restructure our debts, negotiate with the various donors for extension of time, and also to now approach cheaper sources of this debt. The biggest mistake we committed as a country was around 2014, when we decided to go commercial debt. And that is very, very expensive. It is something we criticized and opposed at that time, but we were never listened to. Now we have to shift. Debts we'll have to take. We are still a developing country, but we must source debts from cheaper sources, from the multilateral organization like IMF, World Bank. We ran away from them because their conditions were stringent in terms of usage, prudent usage of resources. We also have to generate more local revenue. If you look at the pattern, the percentage of revenue vis-a-vis, or tax revenue vis-a-vis our GDP, it has been shrinking. It has been going down from about 19% to now about 16%. We must raise it back to 19, if not more. So let me just say that 3 approaches of making funds available for this, what we have here. And this is supposed to be in 100 days. So Trevor, number 1, we have to rearrange our budget. That's a fact, as he has put it. And number 2, we have to seal the corruption loopholes, which has been estimated to be taking close to about 700 billion in this country. If we could get that money back to proper use, then we would not have a problem of the budget deficit that we have today. Thirdly, is a long term. And that is what Azimio One Kenya has done, that we must grow our economy further, that we must generate more wealth. But that wealth generated must be shareable to a majority of Kenyans.
Yeah.
And that is why we are emphasizing manufacturing, as opposed to our friends who just want to talk about giving people to hawk money. Not all Kenyans would hawk. Because if we are all hawkers, who will buy these wares that we hawk? And who will get us the wares that we hawk? We must now shift. No country, no economy in the world has ever sustained a double-digit GDP growth without industrializing, without manufacturing. And that is why you find in an Azimio manifesto, manufacturing is key. We want to make sure that our agriculture is mechanized. We want to make sure that our livestock industry, manufacturing supports it. Our blue economy supported. ICT is supported. We must move now to real digital economy, not the one that we were cheated of in 2013. We want real now digital economy, not digital economy that only remains in manifestos. So we are moving. And by the way, we have very clear and robust strategies for economic revolution. Look at our talk about Ujuzi Teke Teke. It is something very interesting, very exciting to the youth. If we can implement this, and I have no doubt, because Kenyans know we can trust Raila Odinga with this, definitely Kenyan economy is going to grow, and we'll be able to implement even much more than this. By the way, when Kibaki made a promise when they were campaigning with Raila in 2002, that there would be free primary education, the naysayers said there is no money. But immediately they came into office, they implemented it immediately. It didn't take time.
All right.
Budget was rearranged, corruption loopholes were sealed, revenue was raised immediately, and money was available. That is what Raila Matha ticket will do.
All right. Nyakundi, should the 12th Parliament have raised the debt ceiling, in your view?
For me, no. And I tend to differ because with the honorable members that everybody has spoken about why we should increase it. But I live in the present, and most of the people I speak to live in the present. When we talk about the future, you lose us because one, this debt that has spiraled, it is actually unsustainable as we speak. Has been going up each and every time. And what our honorable members don't tell us is that when these debates come to Parliament, they don't raise those kind of issues. I think it's just in recent times that a number of civil societies and organizations have been speaking about this debt issue, that it has become a national agenda and issue now that they are speaking about it. And we live in a reality where we see things. If you promise us that we will grow our GDP, we look at the present, what is happening. In the last 4 or 5 years, we've been losing quite a number of companies in terms of investment. Companies are closing in Kenya, citing the cost of doing business in this country. So we have not seen really concrete steps that the government has undertaken to ensure that we will actually increase that GDP. And when I speak to the people sometimes in our forums, the people keep asking us, what is this government talking about GDP? Because people do not understand GDP when you talk to them. They want to know what are these steps that government is, for example, taking to ensure that our GDP grows. So from our end, I think that issue of the debt shouldn't be increased. I pity the next government that comes into place because it inherits quite a burden in terms of ensuring that it manages that debt. But that is something that was within the powers of both the National Assembly and the Senate. They should have arrested this before it got out of hand. Thank you.
Can I just...
yes, Mari.
Yeah, I agree with Nyakundi, but there's something that I wanted to mention. Nyakundi has said that this is a time, maybe after the civil society have spoken about debt that we are talking. I don't think that's accurate. Nyakundi has given me a present previously, or his organization, for being the most active member of parliament 2 consecutive years, that is 2014, 2015, 2015, 2016. My biggest contribution in parliament has always been on the issue of debt. If you go to the Hansard, I started talking about the unsustainability of our debt from 2014, where the rain started beating us. Trevor will say that Jubilee One started so many projects at a go. The road projects that are being completed, the ones that Uhuru Kenyatta talked about, the 11,000 kilometers of road, 3,000 were completed, yes, in the first term. But all these roads were started in the first term. You know, roads take so long to complete. And I will tell you that sometimes the government starts road construction in this country on promissory notes. You find the budget for, they just look for mobilization money.
Yeah.
A road is supposed to cost 5 billion, but they look for only 500 million. Start the road, they don't even plan on how to get the other 4.5 billion shillings. Azimio government is talking of, we are going to scale down on unnecessary capital investments and now invest in people and invest in manufacturing so that we can grow our economy to be bigger. Is when now we can go back to massive investments on infrastructure and such like.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Kositan, I know you want to jump in on this before I take a quick break here.
Yes, I think we need to be honest with Kenyans when we discuss issues, especially here on national television. The biggest problem that we faced, and I'm happy that Mbadi has brought it up, and I listened to him contribute in Parliament. Before the handshake, he was a very, very vocal legislator, especially on matters of debt. But after the handshake, the opposition was consumed. We lost parliamentary strength because of the handshake, because the opposition disappeared. And it is very important for Kenyans to know. And I think due to the handshake, Kenyans have known how important it is to have a robust opposition in place. A lot of this borrowing would not have happened if the opposition had stuck in their place and played their role in checking government. But when they now moved into government and came in even to chair some of the committees that are supposed to be actually government reserve committees, then it became a confusion. We now in government had to try and play the role of the opposition, which we could only play up to a certain level. So I think as we go into this election, we pray that when the Kenya Kwanza government comes in, the Azimio team will play their role in the opposition to check. We want a robust opposition so that as we serve Kenyans, we serve them as we stick onto the lines of the Constitution. As it is now, the handshake gave us a lot of problems. We actually lowered the guard, and 2 critical committees, and I believe everybody will agree with me, PAC, the Public Accounts Committee, and the Public Investments Committee actually became dormant. They have not produced anything when there is rampant corruption. You saw yesterday the Auditor General giving a report on how government and the media massage, they say wastage, but it is actually runaway corruption that we have seen. The Ministry of ICT cannot account for 12.5 billion. There's 70 billion that was borrowed and not invested in any project, and the money went to unknown sources. Yeah. So it is important that we say that going forward, we require an opposition. Okay. And when Kenya Kwanza wins this election, which we are going to win, the opposition should take their role. We don't want a handshake. We want everybody to play their role as they have been placed by the voters. All
right, let's take a quick break on daybreak. When we come back, we talk about the performance of the 12th Parliament. On a scale of 1 to 10, how did they perform, and what lessons can the 13th Parliament learn from the 12th Parliament? That in just a bit. At Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag daybreak. We're still going to talk about, it's almost related to the Standard front page, warning signs of a supreme battle with the IBC there. IBC says the Parliament itself delayed the election laws. We'll talk about that in just a bit, also coming up shortly.